Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how I was able to change the design of my slicer to this setting. I changed the design to this design. Now to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is to insert my slicer. So I'll go to slicer and then I'll go to click on state name. So when I do that, notice how the default slicer design comes here, but I don't like it. So to change it, I'm going to still go to slicer. So when I go to slicer and then I'm going to come to new slicer style. So for the new slicer style, you're going to see some slicer elements such as whole slicer, header, selected items, and other stuff like that. So we're going to be working with this stuff to change the design of our slicer. So I'm going to begin with the whole slicer. So I'm going to go to format. And for the font size, I want my whole slicer to be at font size 12 and I want it to be bold. For the border, I want this thick line style and I want everything to be with this line style. And for the fill color, I want it to be green. So I'm going to go to custom and then I'm going to go to, I'll change the font size of this to 3. I'll change the color red to give it 3 and this 181 and I'll change the blue to 3. So I'm going to click on OK and I'll click on OK. Now when I click on OK, you notice nothing happened. Well, it's because I've not clicked on it. So this is the new slicer stamp. So I'm going to click on it. Now you notice it has brought out, it has changed the design. So to modify, I'm going to right click and then click on modify. So I'm going to go to the header. Now to format the header, I'm going to go to the font. Now the header in the slicer represents just this area that has the state name, just this area. So I want the font size to still be at 12. I want it to be bold, but then I want it to be white color. So for the border, I want here to have not that thick. I want it to be this thick. And I'm going to click on just this. So the font, the fill, I like the color the way it is. So I'm going to click on OK and OK. So you notice how the change has been effected. So modify again, I'm going to right click and click on modify. So selected item with data represents all the items in your slicer that have data. So all these items have data. Well, I like the way it's appearing, so I'm not going to do anything to it. Now selected item with no data represents all the items in your slicer that has no data. Well, unfortunately, all our items have data, so there will be no need to touch that. Now, unselected item with data. What this means is that if, for example, I select Akwa Ibom, it means Bayelsa, Cross River, Delta, Edo, Rivers becomes unselected item. So they become unselected items. So how do I want them to appear? So when I click on Akwa Ibom, how do I want the remaining ones to appear? Or when I click on Bayelsa, how do I want the remaining ones to appear? So I'll click on unselected item with data. So I'll click on format. So for the font size, I want it to have a smaller font size and I want it to be bold. So for the border, I want it to have this double line border and I want it to have, it's going to be for all of them. Now for the fill, I want, when I click on Akwa Ibom, I want it to be white. The other ones that are not selected to be white. So I'll click on OK. OK. So notice that when I click on Akwa Ibom, for example, you notice that everything has changed. So that is how to do that. Now to continue with our changes, we can still modify and then now unselected item with no data represents those items that are not selected and they have no data. So we don't have that here in our slicer, so we'll skip that. The next one is hovered selected item with data. Now all the items here are with data. So when I'm hovering over them, how do I want it to be? So I can format that. Sorry, let me cancel that. So I'll go to hovered selected item with data. So I'll format that. So for the font, so when I'm hovering, I want it to be at font size 18 and I want it to be bold. For the border, I like the way it is like that. For the fill, I want when I'm hovering, I want to have a white fill. So I'll click on OK. OK. So when I clear this filter, for example, you notice when I'm hovering, everything is becoming bigger when I'm hovering. Now, still on the slicer setting, we can also modify that hovering setting. When I click on hover selected item with data, so for the font size, I want it to be bold italic so that when I'm hovering, you will notice that there are changes. So that is how to do that. Now, still on the setting, we can right click and go to modify. Now for hover selected item with no data, well, there is no item here with no data, so I'll skip that. Now hover on selected item with data. Now when I click on Akwa Ibom, when I'm hovering over those ones that are not selected, how do I want it to be? So I'll still go to hovered, I'll still go to format, I'll still leave the font size to be 18 and still bold italic. And for the fill, I want it not white this time, but let's use ash. And I click on OK. So you'll notice that when I click on Akwa Ibom, for example, so when I'm hovering over the other ones, the ones that are not selected, you'll notice how they are changing. So the final thing we're going to do is to change the column. We increase the number of columns to 2, so that we're appearing like this. And then we can now drag it and reduce the size. So you see, so this is how to edit and format your slicer in Excel.